From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt. Our colleague Noel is on an adventure.
They call me Ben. We're joined with our super producer, Dylan the Tennessee Pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. And we're coming to you amid some incredibly fast-moving, fast-paced, chaotic times. And one thing that we talk about a lot offline is that it can be easy to forget, amid all this pandemonium, that the world of the past is still chock full of strange, inexplicable things. Like, I think we all, Matt, have had this assumption on some base level that because something happened long ago, we somehow figured out the answers to what happened and why as a civilization. But that's not entirely the case.
Oh, no. Especially, I think, in my opinion, at least, as satellite technology has increased exponentially, as the ability to image things from super far away, to see through water, right? To like the depths of the ocean, all of these things, you feel like, oh, we've discovered pretty much everything now. We understand, because there are enough humans who've been around working long enough, looking at history and archaeology and things like that. We know things. We know it all.
Yeah. And it's a dangerous assumption to make because it could not be further from the truth. Human civilization does not know most things. If you were just thinking about all of the things, human civilization does not know most of them. And that's not a ding. Everybody's been working hard.
It feels like a ding, man. Oh, I don't know.
For thousands of years. You know, people know more than they did earlier. I guess you could say that. We've lost technology in cities along the way. And if you travel all the way out to Micronesia, a place that we have not visited, you will find a ruined city that looks straight out of an H.P. Lovecraft story, and indeed probably inspired a lot of conspiratorial writing and a lot of fiction. It's a place called Nan Madol. And tonight, we're going to ask what happened to this place. What is it to begin with? Why is it abandoned today? And we were also speaking briefly off air here. One of the most important things we have to give at the top is a pronunciation disclaimer.
Yeah, look, we're trying our hardest. We're looking at websites that, give you the pronunciation, and then we're trying to get those. Some of them, we just can't find that. So we're going to do our best.
I watched some in-depth depictions of the oral history of this area of Micronesia with people speaking in native languages. And along the way, I learned that several of the things we're going to talk about have multiple names. Mm-hmm. And each of those multiple names may have multiple pronunciations. So like Matt said, we're doing our best. Bear with us. We are going to spell out things.
Yes.
Because that'll probably be easier for you to search than hearing us, do linguistic parkour.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We'll be right back, and we'll get to them pronunciations.
Here are the facts. Micronesia, stunning place, or I guess we should say a stunning series of places, right?
Yes. A whole bunch of places that exist on vast ocean expanses. Very small islands, some a lot larger than the others, at least by comparison. Some islets, a lot of atolls, and it's amazing stuff. It's mostly volcanic activity that formed these places over a long period of time. But the coolest thing about this area is that there are a lot of humans that live on these, fairly small places, at least when you look at the continents that they're not that terribly far from.
Yeah, and I think just the scale of this can be difficult for a lot of us to imagine if you haven't been in that part of the world. A lot of these islands also are uninhabited or they're only seasonally inhabited. There's a lot out there, a lot of remote stuff, and it's a place that this part of the world here, kind of north and northeast of Australia, is a place that a lot of us have wanted to visit. It's just incredibly difficult to get there from the United States.
Yeah. We're talking hopping on planes. You were just describing, Ben, our old buddy Scott from Car Stuff.
Mhm.
And can you just explain a little bit of that, like the number of things you have to do?
Yeah. So our pal, our comrade Scott Benjamin, very interesting, brilliant guy, worked with us on many shows, including Car Stuff. And he and his wife would fly out to Bora Bora, to an island somewhere in that area. So they would have to take a flight from the US. They would land one place. I think they had to fly to another place after that. And then the planes that they were on just kept getting smaller and smaller until you're on a puddle jumper. And then you have to get on the boat, and the boat takes you to the actual island. He says he has a great time when he goes. But I don't know if that's like 2 days to get there or what his deal is. But we're saying that to show you the sense of scale. And like you said, it's a stunningly diverse region. People have been living in this area for more than 4,000 years, and we still, as a civilization, have a lot to learn about these earlier cultures, because not all, you see this everywhere, not all had written records. A lot of the way of preserving history, the methods were often oral history, folklore, storytelling. And we do know that not too long ago, there was a mighty kingdom governing this area. And this is something that you and I had talked about briefly when we're snooping around for cool episodes. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think either of us had actually heard of this place. I had not.
I'd never heard of Nan Madol. Nan Madol is how you'd say it, maybe? How did you find it?
This is where we have to spell it. NAN space MADOL. I can't remember, man. I just read too many weird things. I wish that I had learned about it because somebody visited Nan Madol. And maybe if you have and you're with us listening along tonight, please contact us. Write to us immediately. Give us any pictures, any links. We would love to learn more, because Nan Madol has this hidden history about it. Oh my gosh, I'm doing the ancient aliens hands. That's not what we're talking about. But one other thing that was of interest to me, Matt, and I think to both of us, is Nan Madol is adjacent to the eastern side of an island called Pohnpei. Not Pompeii, not the Mediterranean disaster site of a volcanic explosion. But I just kept thinking about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so if you're looking at it from a map, Pohnpei, which is spelled Pohnpei, if you want to look it up, if you look at it from above, it appears to be an atoll. So you've got that kind of ring around it, and then an island that has a big old volcano, or what was once a volcano at the center of it. And then if you go down, it's not to the south, it is to the eastern side, but southeast, you will find a whole other separate island that has this place that we are going to. I didn't know it was a separate island. It does not look like it at all. It's called Temwen Island. It's super tiny. Mm-hmm. And Nan Madol is on the eastern side of it.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about this site, it is a city, or it was at one point, and it's built in this lagoon, and it's based upon small man-made islands, artificial islands, which sounds like some pretty high science,
Oh yeah, for sure. And Ben, let's talk about what this thing is, because it's not an island in itself. It is a series of structures that were built quite a while ago And if you look at pictures of them online, maybe we could just describe what it is. It looks like huge flat stone slabs that are then sandwiched like one on top of the other. And then in between, they're much smaller stones that kind of, I would say, like even out or provide support for the shape of the stone that either is below it or above it.
Yeah, they're crisscrossing. And a lot of these stones are columns, essentially, that have been laid out, vertically and horizontally to build these slabs. And again, the thing I keep being amazed by is the idea of man-made islands, of just making an island. For me, that always seems, and I know people have done it in the Middle East as well quite recently, but it always seems like a Herculean feat, a godlike effort, because
especially when you consider when it was done.
Right. Yeah. We know that for thousands of years, people had been living in the area, but they had also been building in the area, which we'll get to. There was a mighty kingdom based in Nan Madol for at least 1,000 years, more most likely, and they were called the Saudeleur dynasty, Saudeleur. And when Europeans got to this part of the world, they were stunned by this place too. The original name for it was Sao Nan Leng, which roughly translates to Reef of Heaven, and because it's built on a lagoon. They use a lot of coral material, like you were saying, to fill in between the stones. And sometimes people will call it the Venice of the Pacific, which makes a lot of sense when you see all the canals that crisscross the area. But I've got a question for you, man. How often do places call themselves the eighth wonder of the world?
Like just boast about it and just give them that moniker themselves?
Yeah, I feel like so many things are described as the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah. My nerd basement, I was gonna call it that, but I decided not to. Sorry. No, but it is true, because you got those seven wonders that were so popular, at least at the time when we were growing up, and you look at an encyclopedia or, one of these books, there were the seven ancient wonders of the world then, and then the seven modern wonders of the world. Yeah. And if you're going to get on that list, you're going to have to be number 8.
Yeah. There's a waiting list, and I'm just looking through different things just on the fly. There are, it turns out, a ton of candidates for the eighth wonder of the world. Quite a lot, actually. So does Nan Madol deserve that moniker in particular? I don't know, but we can see the Venice thing because it has, it's a city somehow built upon a canal. It's also a megalithic structure, and it's the stones that you're talking about there, Matt. They are so heavy. They are so stupidly heavy that, knowing what we know about technology during the time of its construction, which was a very long construction period, we know it had to be a pain in the keister to get this stuff in the first place. And we're still not sure exactly how it was built. We have theories, but we're not 100% sure.
Oh, yes. This is a massive set of structures, a complex, let's say, that was at one time like the central place of power for this Saudeleur dynasty. And it was where basically the religious folks hung out. And there's some incredible design in there. It is now, we have to be clear, it's ruins now. It's just kind of what's left of mostly the stonework that existed at the time. But man, it is huge. And these stones are massive. You think about, the only thing I ever think about is if you go in your backyard or you go out to a park or just somewhere that is in nature, even in a forest, and you see a stone, my mind always miscalculates how heavy that stone's going to be. Like if it's something the size of both your hands that you would bend over and pick up, I always miscalculate and I think, oh, I could easily pick that up. And then you go, oh, that is significantly heavier than I imagined. And now imagine stones that are, 6 feet across or larger in some cases.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have, unlike some similar sites like Angkor Wat, for instance, we don't have the benefit of a lot of carving or art wrought into these things. They are beautiful, but they are ruins. The primary sources are actually legends, especially when you talk about sort of the bad guys in our story this evening, the Baudelaire dynasty. And it reminds us of how, and it's common in history, when an ancient city gets to a certain threshold of prominence or renown, it becomes legendary in a given culture. In the West, maybe one of the most famous examples of this is the story about the founding of Rome, right? Romulus and Remus, little wolf boys.
Yeah, because in this story, it is two brothers that show up on the island, right? And one of them gets married into the tribe that's already there, and when that brother dies, the other brother says, "I'm God now."
Yeah, pretty much. Nan Madol is like, I agree with that, because Nan Madol does have this legendary origin story. According to the story, way back when, two twin brothers who were also sorcerers, Olisipa and Olosopa, they came to this site from a fictional island that exists in other legends. So they were foreigners, and they arrived at this place wanting to build an altar to the god of agriculture, Nani Son Sapu. I'm murdering those pronunciations. I'm so sorry.
Let's do the spelling. NAHNISOHN space SAHPW.
Yeah. Again, we're doing our best, folks. And
yeah. We're talking about the size of these stones, right? And it is a legend. This is oral histories, right, of peoples who've lived there for, again, as we've said, thousands of years. Humans have inhabited this area way before even this legend is supposed to have occurred. And the story goes that these massive stones were moved with the help of sorcery, a little bit of sorcery, but also, what's that thing? A dragon.
Right. Yeah. Because, people had dragons,
God,
I guess. But
that would be so cool.
It reminds me of Coral City in a way. The story's about, Edward Lee Scanlon?
Using vibrations, basically, to levitate huge pieces of coral and move them around.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of our early explorations together. And Coral City, if you haven't heard, check out our video or episodes on it, but also get out there if you can, because it's a similar thing on a much smaller scale, but it's also way easier to get to. You can, if you live in the US, you can drive to Coral City.
I still haven't been.
It's worth it. Yeah. It's worth like a nice little weekend trip for you. I don't know much about the area. I didn't spend much time there outside of going to that thing.
Is it Coral Castle?
You're right. It is Coral Castle. I keep calling it Coral City because I've got cities on my mind. Yeah.
Well, it's like a little city. It is. It's super complex and it's fascinating. Check it out. But in this case, these guys use their sorcery and dragon to move some stuff around. And there are even stories in there about dragons not being the only awesome, maybe mythical creature that you'd find in the area.
Yeah, because it's oral, it's oral folklore. So sometimes the story will change. You might see like a giant that they have summoned being described as their prime mover. But we know, regardless of what happened, we know, like you were saying, Matt, a complex story of intermarriage and becoming locals. So Olisipa does intermarry with locals and dies of old age, because even if you're a sorcerer, some things are inescapable. And when he died, like you were saying, the twin brother, Olosopa, becomes the first of the Baudelaire dynasty. So already the existence of this ruling class is shrouded in its own somewhat self-aggrandizing legend.
Oh yeah. And according to legends, as this area grew and as the dynasty grew in power, they separated themselves off from everybody else, basically, in this area that is known as Nan Madol. And then they had a bunch. I think what I read was it was around 1,000 human beings that lived in that immediate area, but almost all of them were servants.
Yes. Yeah. And this is, we'll get to some sticky stuff here. Yeah, you're right. All in all, if we were thinking of like the Nan Madol metropolitan area, I guess, then we're looking at about a little south of 7 square miles. So it's big. It's big. And that includes the architecture that we were describing on this coral reef along the shore of Temwin Island, and then some of those other man-made islands, and then that little part of the main island's coastline. But the inside of it, you know, where the fancy folks lived, that was a little less. There was like a mile by less than half a mile, but they had a lot of tiny islands in there, and it's no longer inhabited. I can't wait for us to explore the stone and the structures and the mysteries. But we know nobody lives there now. We'll see why. The canals and structures that once teemed with life are abandoned. And if you ask a lot of the locals, they'll tell you the city belongs to its ghost.
Ooh, and you can imagine it too, especially when you see the jungle overgrowth, or like the huge amount of vegetation that is growing within these structures, around these structures. They're almost hidden from view. A lot of them are, and then some of them are a little more visible, and you can imagine exploring it, and especially at night. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Oh,
I'd love it.
I want to do that.
That would be so cool. Hey, folks, if you if you happen to be a patron of Weird Adventures, have we got a pitch for you? Get to us after this ad break. Here's where it gets crazy. Yeah, and I think exactly in the same manner as you are right here. How odd to be there at night, just to hear the sound of the water and the jungle, you know, and the canals. A lot of modern people in the area view the ruins with awe and seriously a small amount of fear, because even if you consider yourself a dyed-in-the-wool skeptic, you know what I mean? There's very much a vibe to ancient places, and you know, just because you don't believe in ghosts doesn't mean you're going to be comfortable in the graveyard at night. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Well, and I don't mean to bring this up out of nowhere. I think it's connected to what we're talking about, but I'm not sure. The concept that these sorcerers showed up on the island and had a dragon, built this thing, and the purpose was to worship the god of agriculture.
Interesting.
Right, because and what I'm assuming is that the god of agriculture, and I haven't been able to find this fully in the research, but the god of agriculture is also the god of a lot of other things. The way many gods are, you know, attached to other things, because you imagine agriculture is probably related to fertility in some way or another, having to do with the growing of crops and new life and that kind of thing. So I wonder about all that stuff. Then I wonder about what went down in these areas when there was royalty living there, no matter how magical they were or not, right? And they were, I don't want to say power hungry, but they were living that isolated life, right? And you just imagine the things that people get up to, and I don't mean to do this, but I'm thinking about Sean Combs right now and the 1,000 bottles. But I'm thinking about the things that, if you are ultra powerful and wealthy, you could get up to, that are kind of creepy. And you imagine them happening in this space, right? Where you're now exploring, and it's just ruins.
Right. Yeah. The time that has passed. It's true. History is much closer than it looks in the rear view mirror. And when we answer the question of what happened, we'll do it in reverse order. First, let's talk about what happened, and then we'll talk about how they built it, because I got the notes wrong. But in the world of oral storytelling, in this typical historical preservation method, what we find is a lot of stories come to us as legends. So there is a legend, just like the construction of Nan Madol. There is a legend also about the downfall, and it's exactly what you said: too much power. The Saudalier dynasty apparently started off pretty cool. Like the sorcerer guy was kind of, he had a dragon and stuff like that. He was kind of cool. But
he was building all this stuff. That's
built
neat.
a bunch of stuff, But as the generations wound on, each new Saudalier or each successive Saudalier ruler became increasingly oppressive and tyrannical, and they demanded more and more from the common folk under a tribute system. And they ignored the people's pleas for mercy or assistance, like, hey, the weather was bad. I have just enough fish to feed my family. They said, nope, you have just enough fish to feed us. Good luck out there, buddy. And I love that we're drawing parallels because you can see these kind of parallels in a lot of other unequal societies. But Matt, because this is a legend, the real downfall, even though there's already bad vibe throughout the land, the real downfall for the Saudaliers begins when they piss off the god of thunder.
Uh-oh.
It is very much in play at the time. Yeah.
Is it the same one we're thinking about, or is it a different god of thunder?
Oh, he pissed off Chris Hemsworth. Yeah.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Right.
That guy seems really nice.
He actually does seem like a very genuine, a happy and warm dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, but this thunder god is, we're going to try and pronounce it, Nan Sapwe, Nahnsappwe. Yeah.
Yeah. Not the most well-behaved of deities. Like a lot of other gods and pantheons, he wasn't always known for obeying human concepts of morals, right? So he found the wife of the Saudalier ruler at the time and committed adultery with her, and the ruler was super mad. And so he did a couple of things that might sound strange with our modern understanding of gods. First, he did character assassination. Nobody worshipped the thunder god Nan Sapwe. Then he set out, and I still understand this, to physically capture and punish the god.
Whoa.
Now, I get an angry husband wronged, but the idea that you could go and physically capture a god is pretty fascinating.
Well, he's got that sorcerer blood, probably, so you never know.
He's got that dog in him. All right.
Yeah.
You're right. And the other parts of the legend, without getting too into the weeds, they diverge in explanation. They will say, well, no, what really happened is the Saudalier ruler angered a bunch of other gods. And then he also fired a high priest. And when he fired the high priest, who was super pro thunder god, by the way, then the priest either prophesied the downfall of Nan Madol or laid a curse to make it so. You know what I think is happening? And this is entirely an armchair guess. I think often we see in history that the deeds of a single notable person or a lot of notable deeds by multiple people in oral traditions, they get combined into a character, and that creates the god. So it's quite possible that there was just a dude or a regular human being who committed these, acts of infidelity and then fled. And then as the story goes on, they put a different name to it and associated it with pre-existing beliefs. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I like to add, but I don't know at the end of any statement like that. Just
you should.
But I don't know.
That is the right and good thing to do. Because we don't know. But it continues going. So depending on what you believe, something occurred and this thunder god was upset at the rulers, right, of Nan Madol at the time. So he takes off, goes to this whole other place called Kosrae, Kosrae. It's a whole other group of islands. And according to the story, he feeds someone who is described here as of his own clan. So maybe even his offspring of some sort,
right,
or at least familial relation.
Mm-hmm.
He feeds a lime to someone within that group and gets that person pregnant. And, this is an incestuous act of some sort. And this act creates a whole other god, but in this case, a demigod. Ooh, gosh, The Rock just started singing in my head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I freaking love Moana, and whenever I read demigod, it's in his voice now.
Oh yeah. And Moana's good. It's a good film.
It really is.
I don't know, man. It's in that age where those sorts of animations were just absolutely knocking it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's nostalgia for us. No,
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think it's actually good.
Either way, it's okay. You're welcome.
And as you have the Rock's earworm in your head, we want to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, the demigod produced by this strange Lyme pregnancy, Isokelekel, Isokelekel. And this guy is, half human, half god. And according to the story, as soon as he is born, even in the womb, he knows that he has one purpose: to be an instrument of vengeance against the Saudelaire and to be a hero for the people who are suffering. And so it comes to pass that when he reaches adulthood, he sails to Pompeii with 333 men, women, and children. And their goal is to supplant these jerks, the Saudelaires, who are just brutal dictators and chieftains. And he also is an ethically gray character at points, because you'll hear that to consecrate this voyage and this invasion, they conducted human sacrifice for the favor of the gods. So it's just saying he himself is not like a 10-10 dude.
No, I mean, he is vengeance incarnate, which, probably means he's not the nicest guy.
Yeah. It makes you think, like, is the Punisher a hero?
Ooh. In some senses, definitely. In others, heck no.
It's amazing how he fits into the world of Marvel comics with all the demigods and the superpowered people. And he's just a guy who doesn't give a F.
Yeah.
That's his deal.
just don't mess with his family. Whoops, you did. Uh-oh.
Oh man. I also wonder what the line is for the Punisher. Like, if you are going to be executed for committing crimes, is there a threshold on the crimes? Like, can I get away with a little bit of stamp fraud?
He would be amazing as a state trooper.
Oh,
just
God.
Like catching speeders.
Just with the
what are
busted,
you doing?
busted traffic light. So maybe a good comparison is Isokelekel is Herculean, is a demigod, and does have this Punisher aura about him. But the legends get fuzzy themselves at this point. There are all these different versions about how the actual war broke out. One version says there were these local kids playing around the canoes, and it escalated. They ticked off Isokelekel's people, and then those guys started attacking the kids, and then it became a whole fracas. Or maybe Isokelekel conspired. Maybe he sent one of his lieutenants over somewhere at a specific time to start a fight, and then he could say that he was reacting in defense of his people, which is, a wartime strategy.
Yeah. Well, there's also the concept that potentially all of those servants and people that were basically being forced to labor for these rulers kind of were down with Isokelekel coming over and going, hey, maybe we can actually be liberated from all this tyranny.
Yeah, a folk hero, a hero warrior, the man of the people. That's the story that I don't know about you, but I like that one, because it makes it sound like we're fighting for justice.
And all he had to do was sacrifice some people for the blood feud,
Right. He just had to pay the blood price.
Or they did.
They did. Yeah, he was there, but he didn't pay that price. And so there's the other conspiratorial angle would be that he had help from the inside, because the Saudelaire civilization is already at some very serious fracture points. So there's one version of the story where a lady from the ruling class has been humiliated and cast out, and so she wants regime change. But in her head, yeah, she'll help Iso get rid of her enemies, but the game is still very much Saudelaire to her. She just wants to be the next ruler, kind of thing.
Oh, this is Game of Thrones. There's dragons, guys.
Yeah. Everybody's speaking like this.
Oh, yes. One more connection here, guys. The translation of Ponbei, Phohnpei, is upon a stone altar, which makes me think about a stone chair.
Oh,
and a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. I don't know.
No,
why
it's so worth it. Oh, we're going to reread it. Black Monday Murders, folks. We talked about it a lot, but it's great. We were in talks with the amazing artist on that project, Tom Coker. God, what a great one. Yes, I know it. I get it. I think that's a great connection. We also, while we're talking about what things mean, Iso translates to shining, noble, or wonderful king. So that gives us a degree of spoilers about how this story works out. The legend goes, eventually kinetic war occurs, and the fight is very close at first. It goes back and forth between the Saudelaire forces and Iso forces. But with each shift of the battle, the Saudelaires have to retreat further and further inland to Ponbei. And eventually, the Saudelaire lord at the time ends up in a stream. He transforms into a fish. And the story says you can still find him today if you know where to look. So when you and I go to Nan Madol, we're going fishing too, if you're cool with it.
100%.
Okay, great. And I don't know, man, I know we both enjoy this story, but it leads us to that larger question. If we know that folklore and oral history are living records of the past, dragons aside or not, can we glean any truth from this cinematic legend? Like, how much, if any, of this could we say is informed by actual historical events?
That's a great question. I do know that Maui could change into other animals like a fish. Sorry.
Moana. That's perfect. Yes. And don't look askance at the folks. I don't know about you guys, but Matt and I can't change into fish.
Oh, God. If only we could.
Yeah. What kind of fish would you change it to?
Probably
a sea creature.
Oh, well, okay. Well, any sea creature, definitely going with giant crab first, and then maybe a carp.
These are wow. Okay. I love the specificity.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to think on my answers. Do you want to take an ad break?
Yeah, we will. If I was a giant crab, I would be so shiny. Just, oh God. All right.
And we are back. I am still quarreling with what kind of maritime creature I would want to be, because it kind of depends on what you want to get out of the experience. Like an octopus would be cool, but there are a lot of drawbacks.
What about I was going to say a cuttlefish, but it's we're in the same realm there.
Yeah.
Could be just a big old whale and just see what that's like.
Yeah. Maybe try it out for an afternoon.
Yeah. And then finally you could find out what all those sounds mean. Because obviously if you transform into a giant whale, the sounds are translated for you, right?
Yeah. Clearly that's baked in.
Okay.
Right. Also, this has nothing to do with anything, but did you read the news recently? I've been seeing more and more examples of this, of dolphin interaction with whales.
No.
I saw one where a pod of dolphins came out of the blue, apparently to protect a whale that was giving birth from a bunch of sharks.
Oh, that's amazing.
So they rode in, they did that, and then they rode off.
Well, it's because the aliens are traveling deep underneath the ocean. They're communicating with the cetaceans, not us. The cetaceans are cool. They don't have tactical nukes down there yet, and hopefully they won't. But they're teaching them, hey, you got to look out for one another. That's the whole point of this planet.
That happens sometimes here in the southern part of the United States. I've seen it. You see it in small towns. The closest thing I have to something like that is I had a tire that busted in the middle of nowhere, in a very small town, the back roads. And then a truck came up and like 4 guys hopped out, and I was fine changing the tire on my own. I had all the stuff I needed, but they hopped out and then they just hung out with me. And then another truck stopped. And at this point, it's like 6 people and me, and I don't know any of them from a can of paint. And they were just delightful.
Really?
And yeah, they were just super cool. They weren't, there wasn't anything sinister or whatever. They were just concerned that someone might need help changing a tire. And since I can change a tire and do basic car maintenance, they ended up just hanging out and watching me and like chain smoking.
I really thought you were going to say the leader walked up and looked down at you and looked down at the jack and just went, "You're not going to need this," and kicked it. And while the jack moved out from under your vehicle, the other 5 guys and he grabbed onto it and just lifted it for you. Like,
yeah.
Go for it, man.
Yeah. Cause they're the, it was a random act of kindness from a NASCAR pit team.
Yes.
Right? They just came in, they said, "All right, let's start the timer." There is a lot of truth in the myth or the legend that we see about Nan Madol. We do know that experts believe the ruling class, as you said, Matt, became increasingly ornery. And here's something they didn't think about. So they build this huge, kick-ass, amazing place, this paradise on the coast, but they didn't have a supply of fresh water and they weren't able to grow food there. So they depended on their tribute system to have the locals bring them water, to bring them breadfruit, to bring them fish. And as things are getting worse for the local people, the demands of the elite are also increasing, which, not to walk too far down the street for this, but it doesn't sound too unfamiliar.
Oh, no, not at all. It sounds very familiar. Just this concept that if you mistreat the people who are bringing you your food and water, eventually, after the whole control by fear thing starts to erode, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody you work with. That's the reason we always shout out our producers. Thank you, Dylan.
Thanks, Dylan. You Tennessee pal.
Pals is great. So we also see another thing here, Matt, that unfortunately is not unfamiliar to a lot of us in the audience tonight. Social conditions are changing as a result of environmental conditions changing. And so these vital supply lines start to peter out. The tribute system becomes less consistent and eventually it ceases entirely. We know that to be true. And when they didn't have the supply of fresh water and fresh food brought to them by people that they treated as slaves, then it became impossible to live in Nan Madol long term. Every time you want a glass of water, you got to walk 7 miles?
It doesn't sound ideal.
No, I mean, I guess it's important to get your steps in, but it's like Angkor Wat. Again, the changing conditions rendered this top-notch piece of real estate unviable. So that's probably what happened with the downfall. But I think one thing that fascinates us both just as much is how did they build it?
Yeah,
like I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. I'm very impressed, but how?
Well, it's a great question, and it does make me wonder, and I don't have any research on this, but it does make me wonder if the smaller rocks that are beneath each of these huge stone slabs, the way they're shaped, they look like maybe you could have rolled those slabs along those smaller stones. Yeah. So if you could get at least the thing started, the question then is, how do you get those other large stone slabs up to the height that you want to get them to and then roll them into place? But, pulley systems and all that other stuff, they're in a jungle. There was probably materials that could have easily been used to secure stuff like that.
Sure.
I just don't know. I don't have that research in front of me. Sorry.
Oh, no. I mean, it makes sense. And even the experts, the people who spend their lives studying Nan Madol, are able to make very educated guesses. But let's just kick some statistics. If you weighed all of the basalt and coral rock structures together, you would be looking at something that weighs 750,000 metric tons. And this was built from the 13th century to the 17th century by a population that was never more than 30,000 people. So that would mean, and I want to shout out Nan Madol specialist Mark McCoy for this. That would mean that the population of Bombay moved an average of 1,850 tons of basalt per year over 400 years. This was the biggest public works project, I think, in that area, outside of China, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that is you can only imagine the number of people that died, if only from exhaustion,
Sure.
right? And not to mention giant stones.
And dragons. Right?
There you go.
Someone's got to feed the dragon. So, a lot of blood price jokes. So, because of our specialist we mentioned earlier, Mark McCoy, we know a little bit more about how this stuff happened. There is, I guess we should say this now, there's a huge deal often made in, ancient alien shows or time life mysteries of the unknown. I'm just looking around at the different books I have that say stuff like this. There's always this big deal of, these mysterious people, how did they do this? They must have had help from somewhere. But McCoy's research, to be clear, is not like that. He is not setting out to, prove a preconceived conclusion. Instead, he did chemical analysis, and he said, holy smokes, a lot of these stones, they clearly didn't come from too close to the site. There wasn't a quarry. A lot of them came from the opposite side of the island, the big island. And they were somehow, like you said, maybe rolled 25 miles to the construction site.
Wow. Which is often the case in these megalithic structures. The stonework, especially in the base stones, came from pretty far away from wherever the religious significant site was that was being built. And that is in itself a feat. 25 miles. My goodness. But the question is, how the heck do you do that? Is it by boat? Is it by dragging? How do you do it?
Yeah. And then I think you're right with complex series of ropes and ladders. Once you get there, if you look at pictures of the ruins, and you can find these pretty easily, it looks so similar to like a big stone Jenga tower, just like a series of Jenga blocks crisscrossing. And they didn't have mortar or concrete, or if they did, they didn't use it. They did something that already might give a few of us a little bit of anxiety. Have you ever tried to balance tricky things, like you put a phone or a plate or the pencil things that they make you do in engineering class?
Yeah, I find it to be a wonderfully little meditative thing to do.
You like it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it gets to me, but it always feels like I'm trying to dismantle a bomb or something.
Yeah.
And like the world will end if the pencil drops. So maybe that's why we get along.
It's not about the consequence or the end, man. It's about just focusing on something, and something that's not easy.
I see what you're saying, and I respect it. And that's why I have so much respect for the architects of Nan Madol, because they were doing the same thing, but instead of with, a number 2 pencil or a pen or something, they were lifting these massive stone blocks and then saying, well, we don't have mortar or concrete, so I guess we'll just try to balance these very carefully.
Yeah. Which is what you would do. And again, what does Mark McCoy say? It's coral material in between the larger stones?
Yeah, coral fill, he calls it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. So that's different from the smaller stones we're talking about that are also like kind of as long. If you imagine them perpendicularly to the large stone slabs, they're like almost the same length as those other stones. They're just perpendicular, smaller, and they're not round. So it's not like an easily rolled thing, but they have shaped sides that are not, let's say, square, right? Or rectangular. They are cut in enough. I imagine like a D20 or something. They're not quite that beveled, but you imagine that it could be rolled if you put significant force on the large slab going across.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right way to put it. Also, do you ever think about what the rationale for these structures is? It's often religious, but I'm wondering because, clearly it's not the work of any one person. How do you convince a society to do this?
We'll kill you if you don't do it.
All right. Well, yeah, that's very direct.
We have a dragon. Make us a temple.
There we go. Yeah, you get in situations, right?
No, I mean, really,
yeah.
I don't understand how else you would do it unless you could control by convincing people that you had, let's say, supernatural powers of some sort, or there was a dragon somewhere that you had, and nobody's ever seen it before, but everybody's pretty convinced you got a dragon.
Mutually assured dragon destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. Yeah, it's the threat of the dragon that's more dangerous than the dragon itself. Yeah, or maybe it was something a little more peaceful and inspiring. With religious motivation. I don't know.
Maybe the land needed that god of agriculture really, really badly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the people said, okay, maybe this is something we have to do in order to survive.
Yeah. And again, people are people wherever you go. These folks had jobs. They had other stuff they needed to do. It just seems like it would take a significant amount of threat or persuasiveness or finesse to also convince them to do this on top of everything else. So we don't know. Maybe it's as simple as people wanting to be part of something larger than themselves. That's a motivation, but I suspect you might be right with threat of death and injury. Unfortunately, the precedent is there, but we know this. This is a result of genius. The builders were geniuses. This is the only city of its kind on a coral reef. It's a shame the society that built it was not as durable as the buildings they created. But I feel like there's so much more to talk about this, but I got to say it just once, man. The H.P. Lovecraft aspect of this. There are so many folks who identified Nan Madol, usually Western guys, identified Nan Madol as the remnants of Lemuria or, Mu or, of course, Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still largely unresearched other ruins near Nan Madol, and they're under the waves. They might be the source of other lost city legends.
I could totally see that.
Yeah.
There's where did you find this image, the site layout image, so we can send people that way so they can find it?
Yeah, it's simple as just go to your browser of choice, type in Nan Madol layout. You'll see a ton of images. Probably the most common is the one from Wiki Commons. We're always hesitant to talk about wiki stuff, but this layout is pretty fascinating because it's a rendering of the location of the big walls and where the canals go in and little structures, all like you said, Matt, off the coast of Temwin.
Yep, it really is a great layout, and it is kind of a rough outline of the structures of where they lay in that area, but it is, I don't know, it helped me visualize it a lot when I've been looking mostly at those satellite images that are what it looks like right now, and most of this stuff you cannot see from that vantage point.
Yeah. And if they had fresh water, it would be so cool to live there. If they had fresh water in it, if it wasn't haunted. I don't know.
Those are pretty major issues, I would have to say.
There's something about places like this, though, that is difficult to articulate unless you've encountered, an ancient site or sacred site. Even as skeptical people, there's a vibe to it. There's an energy that emanates. You know what I mean? I don't know what you would call it, but I do think it's palpable. And maybe that's what draws people to Nan Madol still. We're here in 2024 as we record. There's a mix of scholarship, legend, oral history, and guesswork, all trying to answer these key questions. How did this city come to be? What truths can we find in the legends of its rise and fall? Why do so many people work on things like this only to abandon them later. We should also mention, of course, that Isokelikel, the hero of our story, is considered to be the founder of Pompeii. So this is similar to a George Washington.
Isokelikel, the vengeance guy?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because he became ruler after he got rid of the Saudelaires.
But his dad or father or whatever, God guy that created him started the whole beef by impregnating somebody who he shouldn't have been impregnating.
Yeah,
what's going on here, guys?
The highs and lows. That's what every good story needs. That's what this has. I would love to watch, like you said, a Game of Thrones-esque take on this.
Oh, that'd be cool.
They got the dragon, we've got some magic.
Yeah. Oh, I can visualize it too. Especially, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the production on the shoots. Mm-hmm. It would be so beautiful to film. Like if you could actually go somewhere similar, maybe out there in Micronesia and mm-hmm. create Nan Madol again, but just as a film set.
Yeah, maybe that'll be our pitch when we need an entire population to do a public works project for us.
There we go.
This is part of the film.
But there'll be Teamsters.
There'll be Teamsters. All respect to our Teamster brothers.
Heck yeah.
Don't get us. If you are lucky, we're going to roll the dice on this one as we end. If you are lucky enough to have visited this mysterious place in person, we would love to hear from you. Now, we know the odds are low of actually reaching somebody who has been there, but it would absolutely make our evening because we are convinced there still may be some stuff they don't want you to know about Nan Madol. So let us know your thoughts. Can't wait to hear from you. We try to be easy to find online.
Yes, you can find us all over the social medias. In most places, we are conspiracy stuff, such as on YouTube, one of the most important ones. Definitely, subscribe, like, turn on the bell, dude.
Mm-hmm. Tell your friends we're cool.
Yeah.
Nothing thirsty about that.
Nope. And then also, most importantly, our Instagram page, which is Conspiracy Stuff Show. There, you can also find us on X and on Facebook and in a couple other places, I think TikTok, but focus on those two. You can also give us a call.
Yes, the rumors are true. We have a telephone number just for you, specifically you. Play along at home. Say it with us. 1-833-STDWYTK. Matt, what happens when someone crosses that telephonic Rubicon?
Oh, well, they find themselves in a voicemail system. And once they're there, they've got 3 minutes to leave a cool voicemail. Give yourself a cool nickname when you do call in, and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say than can fit in that 3-minute voicemail, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. So join us out here in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.